We can get started, Brian.
Well, great. Well, welcome everyone. Good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are. I'm Brian Darmody, Chief Strategy Officer for AURP, and I'm coming to you live and in person in Cornell at the University Industry Demonstration Project, UIDP, which is holding a conference in beautiful Ithaca, New York. And we've had a great attendance, and Tony Boconfuso has done, as usual, a great event. And we've had a number of university speakers, industry speakers, and we've had some speakers from the National Science Foundation talking about the TIP, the Technology Innovation Partnerships new directorate. And that's been of great interest, and also, the Build Back Better program that the EDA has its competition out. So I want to welcome everyone, and I think Vicky is double booked, so I think she may be monitoring this, and Diana's there. But I just want to thank everyone, and I haven't had a chance to meet because I've been at UIDP. I haven't met Thaiga. Is that how you pronounce it?
Thaiga.
Okay, and he's with the National Science Foundation Engines program, and that's of great interest. I was on a webinar like a week ago, and I think there were 2,500 people on the webinar, so that was, I think, a record breaker for NSF. So NSF has been great on getting information out, and this is another way of getting some information out. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our colleague from NSF, and he can talk to you about the opportunities this program and the new directorate present to universities, but also the AURP community.
Yeah, can you guys see my slides?
Yes, yep, we can.
Okay. All right, perfect. All right, so hello everyone. Thank you again, Diana and Brian, for giving us an opportunity to do this meet and greet. As Brian hinted at, we have been going around doing a lot of these webinars and road shows, and we're getting quite a bit of participation, but we also are doing much of these smaller one-on-one small group efforts, so we can have a little contextual discussion around the specific concerns and opportunities that individual groups may have. So this is an opportunity for you. And again, I think we believe we had briefed you guys before, maybe before the program was even launched, before TIP was an entity that was publicly known, trying to give a sense of what we're trying to come up with. And so now we have some specifics, and I wanted to come and chat with you. Again, by way of introduction, I am the division director of the Innovation and Technology Ecosystems Division in this TIP directorate that we created in March 2022. I've been at NSF for 10 years and was a program officer and as different levels in the management chain in NSF. And prior to that, I served like 10 years. I worked in the industry, working at Bell Labs in New Jersey, working on again, R&D, but also have done startups, internal startups within the company and so forth. So excited to be here, and I'm going to be talking about the engines. For a small amount of time, I want to spare a good chunk of time for our Q&A. And again, many of this may be familiar to someone who has already attended our webinars, but so please bear with me. I'm going to keep this fairly succinct, right? And again, this is NSF overview at a very high level. If you just looked at it by the numbers from fiscal year 2021, 8.5 billion agency. And again, we sought to increase it this year. And again, Congress, unfortunately, it didn't work out the way we wanted. It's more like instead of 10, that we are hoping for, we ended up at 8.8. But that said, one of the big highlights of the budget this year is we got the approval to go ahead and start this new directorate. And one of the big pieces that I want to also highlight is this, the name TIP stands for Technology, Innovation, and Partnerships. So the technology piece of it essentially is working to collaborate with existing research directorates, the NSF research directorates that are getting bulk research funding that you see in this picture, and we are going to work with them to amplify the work on emerging technologies that they will do, right? And then we also have the innovation piece of it, which is essentially trying to think about new mechanisms to deliver impact to the users. And then the P is the partnerships. And the partnerships, again, one of you see on the lower right, 200 million is a number that we started off with at maybe like 10 million 10 years ago. That was the amount of money we invested in partnerships, again, with like equivalent match from the private sector. That number has really grown by order of magnitude in just 10 years. And TIP is seeking to, again, do a similar order of magnitude increase, in the decade or less, right? So that's something that we want you to keep in mind. And as I mentioned before, right, we really want to work across all NSF directorates. So there's people have sometimes expressed concern. Oh, is this going to be drawing funds away from existing programs? We think of this as delivering more value to the research community served across NSF, because what all of our activities essentially are aligned with taking the outcomes of the research from lab to having an actual practical impact. So that way we don't have a specific research community that we serve on our own. It essentially is taking or benefiting the research that others directorates and units of NSF are funding and making sure that the societal impacts are made very clear. That's our goal. So our real work, our mission, so to speak, is to advance the critical and emerging technologies that in some sense pose pressing challenges for our leadership, right? Make sure that we retain our leadership. And along the way, demonstrate the value of these technologies, the value of the science to address societal problems, economic problems, right? And we do that by accelerating the translation of research results. So that's our big goal, right? And a key piece of it is training the workforce. And I emphasize the word diverse. And this is a challenge that the administrations of both sides have recognized. And diversity is not just racial or ethnic diversity, it's also geographic diversity. We really are looking at ensuring that the US has an innovation ecosystem that spans the entire country across all sectors, across all groups and ethnic and racial groups. So that's our goal, and we want to really think hard. And the NSF Engines is a flagship effort in that, to fulfill that mission. What is the NSF Engines, right? It is essentially an effort to catalyze. That's the word I would think you should all keep in mind. It is a catalyst to accelerate regional scale innovation ecosystems. So this is something that we really want to see advancing critical technologies and addressing the societal challenges different parts of the country may face, right? In Colorado, wildfire and water may be a big problem, right? In Wisconsin, it may be a totally different problem. In rural Nebraska, it could be a different problem. And we really want to look at the societal problems in each of these regions of the country and really stimulate partnerships across existing entities that have probably not done a great job of engaging with each other or benefiting or leveraging each other's strengths. So we want to be the catalyst that creates that synergy, right? And then start creating that acceleration of innovation that will happen when everybody gets together and work together. So with that in mind, we know that this kinds of stuff takes a long time to happen. So this program at the very outset has made it clear that in this for the long haul, a 10-year investment period and a very large amount of investment, which I will note is nowhere enough to sustain an ecosystem on its own. But this is why I emphasize the word catalyst. It is a catalyst. It will give you enough support to draw in external funding, to make the region and the partnerships become as attractive as possible to other stakeholders who can bring in their own resources, venture capitalists who would be ready to invest, right? So this $160 million should be seen as a catalyst to draw in this external funding. And we are going to be in there for 10 years. And again, this is for regions that feel that they have those critical pieces. We also recognize that there are many parts of the country that do not have that level of readiness. But they're interested in building up and identifying those partnerships, working with their state and local governments to line up the structures that are needed. And for them, we have what we call as the Developmental Awards or the Type 1 Awards, which will give up to $1 million for them to start planning for it. The way to get started with all of these is to submit what we call as a concept outline. The deadline is coming up in less than 4 weeks. And we encourage everyone, you and your stakeholders that you represent, please pass the word around. we are going to have ways to network people after this. And in order for us to be able to do so, we need you to submit your concept outlines. You need to have approval from NSF to submit a proposal that can only be given following the submission of a concept outline. So this is your entry ticket into the competition. Please make sure that you mark this date out and follow up on that. Now, again, just to reiterate, what is NSF Engine, right? It is a catalyst. It is a coalition of regional partners who will work together, right? They are going to start forming a regional innovation ecosystem. And it is going to grow in size. Our hope is that through the period of investment, this catalyst will continue to function well and grow the ecosystem so that even beyond the 10-year period, this innovation ecosystem region can become self-sustaining, right, on its own, with the NSF Engine acting as the innovation crux, right, delivering more and more R&D innovations down the line, right? And again, they could also be drawing funds from other agencies as well, by virtue of having developed a reputation for being leaders in the area that they're trying to solve. And again, we are looking for a much more organized, structured effort, right? This is not a typical ERC, an Engineering Research Center, or an STC effort that NSF has funded in the past. We really are looking for a greater level of accountability and a strict commitment to the mission. And therefore, we are asking for an engine proposal to be led really by a CEO, right? Somebody the equivalent of a CEO, who can work with all the partners and make sure that the project stays on task. Okay. And again, as I mentioned before, there are two types of proposals. What you see up in the chart essentially is what we think of as the various phases in which an innovation ecosystem finds itself. And they kind of grow through this. And again, this is our characterization of it. When you go out in the literature, there are many, many different ways of characterizing the innovation ecosystem. We have tried to capture it in a certain way that aligns with how we see these regions evolve. And more details of these are explained in the appendix of the first appendix in the BAA. So again, I said the BAA, it's a broad agency announcement. This is another way of how NSF is signaling that this is different. Typically, if you're used to doing business with NSF, you have seen a solicitation or a funding opportunity come through our research.gov. Here, we are making it broader. We are making it a broad agency announcement, similar to what DARPA and others do, mainly because we want to attract for-profit and non-profit companies that have traditionally not done business with us to think about this, because it's not just about standard R&D. It's much more. Growing the economy in a region is much more about just doing R&D, right? So we really want to signal that we are open to other kinds of stakeholders taking a leadership role. And that's the reason we are issuing a broad agency announcement. So again, we have these two different proposal types. The type 2 is actually what we call an actual engine. Type 1 is not the actual engine, it's the planning award that leads up to an engine. So if you read the BAA and you find, do we have to have a CEO for the type 1 award? The answer is no, because the type 1 is not an engine yet. It's just a planning effort to get to an engine. So I can take more questions on that as we go along. But again, I think the key is to really think about what are the pressing problems in your region, right? I mean, and some of this, we get questions from top tier institutions in, maybe in Boston or in Silicon Valley and other places saying, do we qualify? Our regions seem to be doing pretty well in terms of having an innovation ecosystem. And our answer there is, there are other parts of the country that require your expertise and help. So you may not necessarily be the lead because your region is doing pretty well, but you can lend your expertise and assist other regions to make sure that the outcomes of this expertise that you bring can flow into those regions. So if we can figure out a way to make it happen, such institutions can be core partners and they can help, and we can bring all relevant stakeholders. It doesn't have to be all only limited to the region, but people who are across the country can be brought in as core partners to tackle these kinds of big scale pressing problems. Okay. And again, I don't want to beat this more, right? But there are really three important pieces. R&D is only one pillar. It's an important pillar. I'll say that it's a really, really important pillar, because without R&D, none of these things happen, and there's no reason for NSF to do this activity. So R&D innovation is important. it has to involve partnerships, definitely inside the region, but also as I mentioned before, you should be able to bring in partnership from outside the region as well, as long as you can tie it to the growth that will happen in the region. The R&D should also be focusing on a comprehensive workforce development that takes care of the diversity and equity and inclusion issues. And the R&D by itself, however, is not enough, right? The engine should really focus on the various aspects of what it takes to build an inclusive innovation ecosystem. And this includes looking at the region's economic growth, building wealth across the community, and developing a sustainable culture of innovation and DEIA, right, at all levels of the engine. So that's one of the big pieces that sets us apart from existing programs that NSF has run, right? It brings us very much closer to some of the other activities in terms of what Department of Commerce may do with the Build Back Better Regional Challenge, for example. So there's some healthy overlap and synergy that I can talk about later. But the other piece of it is that we also are looking for an engine structure that is highly accountable, has a robust evaluation framework, and is led by a really strong set of leaders within the thing. Hopefully it's not all dependent on one person to pull it all through, but the CEO should be backed by a strong set of a team that can help execute the vision. As I mentioned earlier, we are making this slightly different. Anybody can submit. There's a broad range of people who can receive funds. You can see here in this list, but only the ones you see on the left are eligible to lead the proposal, right? So institutions of higher education, US-based nonprofit organizations, and again, for-profits too. Okay, FFRDCs, national labs, even state, local, tribal governments can receive sub-awards, so they can be core partners who can play a vital role in making certain pieces happen, right? So we are really casting a wide net here. So think about that. And as I mentioned before, there are many different ways in which this can happen. We often get questions around, oh, should it be necessarily led by one institution, right? Can it be a consortium of institutions, right? Universities, absolutely, right? You can have that, right? And the local state governments can be what you call like other partners who are participating in this. You have other versions too, right? You can create a new entity, a new nonprofit that stood up for this purpose, right? And works with all other entities. It could be led by a single university, right? It could be led by a for-profit entity. So we are leaving the option open for the proposers to think about this. And you have to really think about what really would make it work for your region, for the kind of partnerships you can build, and for the effort that each partner is willing to commit. And I will not mince words here. Leading this is going to be a significant amount of effort. And again, the level of accountability that we are going to be demanding is significantly higher because of the large amount of investment and the fact that Congress is going to be paying very close attention to the success or failure of that come out of this program. So accountability is going to be key. And we want to make sure that the leadership that is coming through in any awarded proposal is capable of delivering and managing and executing the vision, right? And working with NSF to demonstrate that level of accountability. Okay. So what I would like to say is, like, think of this as NSF typically is known for seeding research, right? What do you think of this as roots of the ecosystem in general? But with this program, we're really trying to go up the branch, right? We're really trying to become the stem as well and sustain the other kinds of activities that happen. For example, like, what the Department of Commerce and the Small Business Administration and others do, where they throw in extra money for R&D focused economic development, and also to benefit the kind of direct investments that come later, the startups, venture capitalists, and others who come in once you have a concept that's ready to be ready to go to market. So that's what I would say, right? So this is our goal. Right. So, yeah. So what I would say is, I'm hoping that people are getting started on building their teams and they're developing their concept outlines. The concept outlines, again, if you haven't read the BAA, it's for type 1 concept outline. It's only 2 pages, very, very lightweight, and we are not intending to do a major filtering at this stage. We're essentially trying to get a sense of who's going to be doing what are they interested in. Same thing for type 2s, it's only 5 pages. It's not a lot of additional information. Because type 2s are expected to be more ready than a type 1, we're asking for additional information to demonstrate what the readiness levels are. We expect most of these concept outlines to be approved. But again, if you don't have a concept outline approved, you cannot submit a proposal. So that's your entry ticket into this, and a very liberal entry ticket, let me put it that way. And I also will say that we are going to publish a summary of all the concept outlines as soon as we process them, right? And we are planning a proposals day on August 1st, and we will publish the list summary of approved concept outlines well before that, in order to allow for people to look at who are the others in the region who are interested in this, and should we start engaging them, and what kind of partnerships can we develop based on this. We expect teams to start merging together as a result of that activity. And I would really encourage people to start looking at that as an option, and not to get very set on their teams that, okay, this is the team you're going to go in with and no more changes, right? I want everyone to be a little nimble. And this is sometimes a challenge for university folks, especially professors. They make a commitment to someone and they say, oh my God, I don't know how to go back because I found somebody else who's better or who can do things differently. Stay flexible, be nimble, right? Nimbleness is going to be a hallmark of this effort. And I would encourage everybody to communicate that message to your PIs as well. We are having a series of regionally organized events, the road shows. We have one tomorrow. We have done 3 so far. So if you're all a part of these states that are coming up next, we are looking forward to seeing you there. We also have a second Q&A session that is coming up to answer any additional questions about this program next week, so the week after that. So with that, let me kind of pause here and see if I can take any questions.
Thanks. That was great. Very succinct. A lot of opportunities. So AURP, we represent institutions across the country. So if you saw your map of the US and you saw our members, we're in 42, I think now 43 states. So, hopefully our members will be part of submissions. So just a kind of a technical question. As you mentioned, the CEO, if you're in the type 2 proposal, that's going to require a lot of almost full-time effort, I would think. And whether faculty members, would be eligible, which I assume they would be, but from a timing standpoint, they probably can't be teaching over that year or so, right? Is that?
Yeah, look, a CEO is going to be it's a full-time effort, right? You can imagine the kind of activities we are asking an engine to be responsible for. You need somebody who can take leadership, be the advocate for, go out there, draw in partnerships, be the champion for this effort. I have a very hard time seeing how somebody's going to be able to pull it off if they have other responsibilities.
Yeah, so this reminds me, I know you're not calling it ARPA NSF but obviously a lot of agencies, like there's ARPA H for health, there's DARPA, there's ARPA E in energy. You mentioned milestones and other things. This does sound like a different way of a different program for NSF in terms of there being involvement throughout the whole phases of the program. Is that correct?
Yeah, so one of the pieces that we haven't said here is that we are getting a healthy level of interest in partnering with us on this program from other federal agencies, including the ones that you mentioned, right? We have been talking with Department of Transportation, NIH, and a few other places. And again, there are 2 ways in which we can see these kinds of partnerships benefiting the eventual awardees. One, the awardees, proposers can engage with these agencies and the people they know in these agencies or the local offices directly, right? They may have existing relationships that they may want to bring to bear. So that's an obvious one. NSF may also have a much more formal structural agreement and say, okay, hey, here's an engine focused on health, for example, and we may invite the NIH to become a partner, and they may decide to contribute resources, money, cash, in kinds, technical expertise, or anything, right? So that can happen down the road. So both are on the table. And again, from our part, because of the grand nature of this program, We are already working with commerce. We're working with multiple agencies to make sure that all of our efforts are essentially lining up and feeding their missions as well, right? So they need to benefit us this, because this is all a federal government effort. We are really not trying to do this for NSF. We are trying to do this for the nation.
So when in your slide, you mentioned national laboratories as partners, and I just wanted to clarify. I mean, sometimes people say national labs are Department of Energy labs, but by that you meant any federal lab,
Any
right?
federal agency lab, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. And then we had Michael Rosen just said, make those slides available. Since we're recording this, I assume we can send out your slides.
Absolutely. So I'll also say that, we have a YouTube channel where we have this kinds of information out there as well. Feel free to look it up. It's from our website. Share the website as well with you. But it's something that we welcome people to go look it up there as well. There are a lot more information on specific roadshows. If you missed any of your roadshows from the states you belong to, you can go up there and look up the recordings of those as well.
Perfect. And one last question from me. I mean, I thought that was interesting when you talked about maybe Boston or San Francisco can partner with another region. So even if they are, the Midwest or Southwest or whatever, the partners don't have to be geographically next to each other. Is that correct?
Right. So what we are saying essentially is the region of service has to be largely coherent, right? The region of service is where the economic benefits are going to flow into. This is where we expect to see the companies form. This is where we expect the workforce training to happen at significant levels to benefit the region's innovation ecosystem. In order to do so, you may need to bring in expertise from partners who are in the region and outside the region. And these partners can come from anywhere, right? We even have said international partners are also fair game, but we just to make sure that they pass through our security review and everything. We are asking international partners to be added after the award stage and not before. You can make those plans. We don't want you to talk about them now, right? Or make it a conditional upon the success. Similarly, anybody in the country can be a partner, right? But we have to be very clear. The benefits of that partnership should flow into the region of service. Just because somebody from Boston is participating, we cannot let a big chunk of that effort to benefit the Boston region. Right? It goes contrary to what we are trying to do.
So a question just came up, which was in terms of what actually is needed for the concept 1 or concept 2 concept papers due at the end of June. That's going to be in the BAA. That's going to be
in the BAA.
The
exactly.
BAA, which Michael, I think it was listed on the what you just saw. So yes, there's plenty of, NSF has done a great job, I will say, of getting information out. YouTube, you can go on the web, etc. So I want to open this up to questions from the audience. Anyone have some specific questions? This is a great opportunity to speak directly to the NSF. Anyone have any questions?
Sayaga, I actually have a question. Thank you. That was.
And could you identify who you are?
Yes, of course. Yes, my name is Ece Karaten. I'm Vice Provost for Research at Appalachian State University. We're one of the UNC system universities. We're in the Northwest region of North Carolina. And we are recently just started expanding outward from where we are. And we are establishing some new partnerships in a new region, in Hickory, in North Carolina, essentially. But it's a very new process. So there's a lot of interest in an innovation ecosystem in this region, and we've started having conversations with the Chamber of Commerce, the COGS in the region, and some other partners in the region, but we are not quite to the place yet where we can very clearly identify partnerships and a clear vision, essentially. So Type 1 awards obviously would be ideal for this situation, but it's still a very new partnership. So I guess my question is, what type of commitment are you looking for from partners? Or is a verbal commitment sufficient for sort of Type 1 awards? You said that.
Well, for Type 1s, really, we're not looking for any kind of firmed up commitments, right? So remember, the Type 1 award is essentially meant to help you develop that strategic plan right? And start engaging those conversations, that allow you to build a robust type 2 proposal, right? That will happen in 2 years' time, right? So this is round 1 of the type 2s that we are putting out now. The type 1s that we fund in this round will be ready, by the time the awards run out, there will be a type 2 call for funding that they will be able to apply to. We really want to see the type 1 activities to essentially be framed around your ability to get ready for it, right? Developing the partnerships, creating a plan of action of, what kind of topic you want to pick, and how are you going to corral the community to rally behind that and set up the kind of infrastructure and the assets and the resources, and how are you going to draw in state and local governments into the mix. So think about that and form that plan. Developing that plan is going to be the intent of a type 1 award. Right? So we are really opening up that to people who are completely not even ready, nowhere close to being ready.
Just to follow up on that, and in terms of the clarity of the topic, could there be multiple topics, for example, as part of the planning process to really hone in the vision on the particular topic that is the most important in this area in terms of economic?
Sorry, you failed out towards the end of
I'm sorry, my internet, it's a little unstable. So what the question was, can we use part of the planning planning award to really hone in on the most important topic? Can we start with a number of topics, for example? Okay.
I would think of you as so everybody has to, pivots are normal in this business, right? You start off in one direction and you realize that you are not headed in the right direction and you have to pivot, right? If we say, oh my God, no, you said this 5 years ago, you cannot move or change, we are setting ourselves up for failure, right? We know how businesses work, right? They need to be able to pivot to adapt to what they see, realities on the ground. So I would say, yes, go for whatever you think is appropriate at this time. And if you think you have to pivot, that's perfectly okay. I see it from Michael. Sorry, let me get back to you.
Sure.
I think Michael says how many awards to each level. So I'll say right now we are anticipating that 50 awards for type 1, right? And maybe we're thinking around 5 for type 2s. And as I mentioned just earlier, a while ago, this is not a one-time effort. We are going to be having a type 2 funding opportunity so that the type 1 awardees will be ready to apply. And anybody else, like getting a type 1 in this round is not a prerequisite for applying to a type 2. That will come up in 3 years down the road. The type 1s are essentially meant to prepare those folks to be ready, more ready, right, than they otherwise would be. So go for it, Isha.
And what about how will results be monitored for any awardees?
Right. I mean, so that's so we talk about this in the BAA. We have plans for a comprehensive assessment and monitoring mechanism. So again, this would be very much unlike how we have done business so far, right? So if you're used to ERC and STC, this would be a little bit more stronger than that. And we are going to be working with awardees to develop what you call as an evaluation plan, a comprehensive evaluation plan. And this is all going to be done as a cooperative agreement, right? So it's NSF gets to really weigh in on how things are happening. We may have external evaluation teams that may track different awardees and see how they are doing. They may come and engage with on a periodic basis. So there's a suite of things that we talk about in the BAA. And yes, and the reason obviously is this is an important program, and we want to make sure that awardees are on track, or if they feel that they are unable to meet certain expectations, then we are there to help them as early as possible. But at the same token, if somebody is really floundering, we will not hesitate to pull that money away, right? That will happen on much more faster. We believe in this particular program to the fail fast model. If we see somebody failing, we'd rather have them fail fast and keep them going forever and see what happens.
Okay. Any other questions from the audience?
I have a couple more. They're fairly specific questions. So you didn't mention type 1 awards continuing. Is that just for this year type of thing, or are you planning to continue with the type 1 awards as well?
Oh, no,
for next year.
Yeah. The type 1s is just a one-time, right? So we are issuing the ones at this point. I mean, imagine the program's goal, right? We have been tasked by Congress, right? The CHIP director has been tasked by Congress to really accelerate and demonstrate impact of NSF research on what we can do to benefit the country, right? So we really are eager to get this regional innovation engines launched as soon as possible. But we do know that not all regions are ready. Some regions are ready, many others are not ready. And again, we want to bring them all on board. And we are challenging everyone to say, hey, if you really care about your region making a play for this, apply for a type 1 at least. Get ready now, right? If you don't want to do this now, okay, that's fine. You know, maybe sometime somebody else will do something. But right now, we are offering you something to start planning for it. Get your act together, right? Start forming a team to think about at least plan for a type 2 down the road. You may not be successful, but at least we want you to start engaging with us. So our goal essentially is to start with this, get these type 1s out, and then do one more round of funding where we will hopefully award a bigger chunk of type 2s, right? And at that point, our mission at that point is to make sure those investments succeed. So we are going to be paying full attention to making sure those type 2s that we fund are really executing on this mission. You know, if Congress deems is worthwhile, we will get a good chunk of investment to invest in maybe 10 or 15 or 20 type 2s around the country, depending on what the funding levels are apportioned to us. And even if a fraction of them are successful, we'll be seeing new Bostons and Austins and Silicon Valleys emerge, and that's a huge thing for us.
So this is kind of hyper technical, but if somebody applied for the type 2 and didn't win, would NSF say, well, you're not really good for a type 2, but we would convert you to a type 1? Is that possible? Or once you go in on a type 2, you're in for a type 2, whether you win or no?
Right. So look, I mean, this is a question that we got even in the early planning stages. The team was thinking about this. So this is one of the reasons why we are really not announcing a type 2 deadline right now. We really want everybody to make their own assessment of the readiness of the region. Remember, type 1s are about regions that feel that they are not ready. As Eshe just said, you have to make the assessment. It can't be, type 1 cannot be a consolation prize, right? Make your own assessment, right? There's a huge difference, by the way, there's a huge difference between where a type 1 proposer would be and where a type 2 proposer would be. A type 2 proposer would know that they are type 2. They would know, hey, we have been doing some of these things already. We have a network of 15, 20 partners that we can bring to bear, and we know we can make things work. A type 1, they're just getting started, right? So you cannot really say, oh, you're a type 2, you didn't make that cut. Let me bring you down back to that level where you are not even ready. It's not fair to the type 1s who are already in the game, right? So that's the reason why we decided to do it this way. And Michael's question about will there be any feedback on a failed type 1 or type 2? Absolutely, right? NSF prides on its merit review process. We are going to be giving feedback on that, even for concept outlines. For the ones that are approved, we are not going to be saying much, right? But we may give some feedback, but don't expect too much from this because, hey, if everything is good, why should we say anything? But if it's if you're going to reject them, a small number of them will be rejected most likely. We will give feedback even on why it was rejected. So we will definitely make sure that there is some feedback.
You will be publishing summaries of all of the, but the feedback on failed goes only to the submitter.
Exactly. So we will be publishing only a summary of the approved concept outlines. And again, our intent is to make sure that even those who fail, they applied because they think they have something to offer. And what we are encouraging them, what we will be encouraging them to do is look up the list of the approved ones, look up the ones in your region, and find a way to partner with them.
Great.
Right? We want it to be really inclusive. We really, again, like I said, I don't want people to start thinking, I have my team, I'm done. You have to really think about the different facets that you're asking in the BAA and say, okay, what are the right people that we need to bring? And that structure may change over time. You may not want to engage somebody right now. You may want to engage with them 3 years down the road. But how do you do that? How do you demonstrate that flexibility? And how do you work out an appropriate relationship with those new partners that you may bring on later? That's something the proposers have to think about. Yeah, and I know, Michael, the EDA didn't provide any feedback. And again, NSF is different. We pride ourselves on making sure that our community understands what we do and how we do it.
So any other questions? So one, I know Saiga can't say this, but so the Congress right now is negotiating the two USICA and the America Competes Act. And in that legislation is authorization for funding for new technology hubs and centers, both at Commerce and NSF. So hopefully Congress will be smart and they will approve a large number of new hubs that could be in future phases of the Regional Engines program. And then again, I know you can't talk to this, but I can. So also, getting the appropriations, just because Congress authorizes this program and authorizes a lot of new centers, we as an institution have to make sure our local federal elected officials know the importance of this and make sure that NSF is funded appropriately so that they can, put on future competitions for this kind of regional engines program. So anyway, we and others, UIDP, I think we want to collectively support the idea of place-based economic development, and I think this is a great program. Any other questions? And before we go, can you talk a little bit about TIP? And engines is part of it, but I mean, this is an interesting cross-agency new directorate. Can you talk like how you'll work with other parts of NSF that some of us are more familiar with?
Yeah, look, I think as I mentioned before, TIP really serves to accelerate the impact that other directorates are funding, right? So take a great example. We just announced a solicitation called POST. I think it's like Principles of Open Source Ecosystems. And the intent behind that program, it's a program that has all NSF directorates participating along with TIP. TIP is leading it, right? What we are saying essentially there is, look at the impact open source has had on one sector, let's say the technology sector, where we, the data centers and the cloud computing and everything that we see has really come about because of the open source nature of collaboration and development. How can we bring about a similar revolution in other sectors, whether it's biology or chemistry, right, or in engineering and hardware? So that's an effort that we are essentially doing to, again, to maximize the impact that we can get out of our existing research investments. There are PIs who have published certain things out there, but they don't know how to take it to the next level. They may be like, let's imagine hardware. Somebody publishes the schematics of a particular project that they are doing and say, this is how we did it. And then there's a small open source community, like the other people start using it. And there's a small group of people who are really benefiting from it. But then there's no wider visibility. There is no greater structural effort to kind of take it out and advocate for it and champion it and make it more widely used and prevalent. So maybe there will be a proposer who comes in and says, we are going to stand up an organization that's going to help do this. And we will tie in and bring in contributors from other parts of the country and even around the world to mature this into a robust open source ecosystem. So everybody can add more projects along those lines, and they can essentially benefit from this cumulative knowledge. That accelerates the rate of discovery and and the translation that happens. So that's one example. We want to do similar things across all of our programs, right? Whether it's in education and workforce development, or any other future thing, whether it's we want to have an impact across, not just in terms of startups, not just in terms of new companies or tech transfers, but also in terms of this kind of how do we deliver greater impact to the general public? How do we impact policy and data sets and open data that is available for the community to see and benefit from? So we are going to be working with all the directorates across the board. So that's our mantra. So most of the programs and solicitations that we will publish will essentially, you will see this as a characteristic. We'll be working with pretty much all the directorates in the NSF because we don't have our own community of researchers. There's a computer science researcher, there is a chemistry, chemical researcher, there's a mathematician, or there's a biologist. There is no TIP person. There is no, they are going to be working with somebody. An entrepreneur works with somebody, works in a topical area. And that's what TIP is, right? We are going to be working with them to develop the right kind of projects that will help them demonstrate the impact of their funding. It's a cumulative, right? It's not going to be something that, oh, look, TIP did this. It's not TIP doing this. TIP and this investment is doing this, right? We are just a facilitator. We are a magnifying glass that makes things fast, speeds things up.
Well, great. If there are no other questions, I just want to remind everyone, AURP will be in person in San Diego at our BioHealth Caucus this coming Sunday and Monday. And we'll have Ramon from NSF who will actually talk about the Regional Engines program in person in San Diego Monday morning. So if you are going, or you know folks going to bio or in the Southern California region, have them sign up for our BioHealth Caucus, and we will continue the conversation there about building regional, in this case, life science ecosystems. But as you have heard, the Engines program is open to all kinds of technologies. And we look forward to working with you and NSF TIP and the other parts of NSF and to help build ecosystems across the country. And with that,
see, there's one question up there from Diane Howard. I can answer that question if that's okay.
Sure.
Yeah, so I think, Diane, your question is, there's not enough time between now and June 30th to figure out who's going to manage the proposal and how do you understand the evaluation requirements. You don't have to say that in the concept level, right? The concept outline. So again, I encourage everyone to go pull up the section of the BAA and read the concept outline, right? We really are wanting you to read the BAA in full, which is why I'm trying to not to give all the spoon feed all the information that you're asking, because there's a lot more level of detail that we want you to pay attention to. The concept outline does not require this information at this time, right? You have a lot more time to develop the full proposal that where you can work all these things out.
Good. All right. With that, let's thank Thaiga and our friends at NSF, and hope to see some of you in San Diego or on future peer-to-peers. And thank you very much for your efforts. And we will, Diana or Vicky, do you have anything to close us out?
Yeah, so thank you again, everyone, for joining on today. I know that we changed up the time a little bit for this peer-to-peer, so I really want to thank you for joining us today. Again, as a reminder, this was recorded, and so this will be uploaded onto our AURP YouTube page by the end of the week. There was a lot of information today, so I definitely think we're going to have a lot of people review this recording later on. And then just, I guess, some reminders. Again, we do have the BioHealth Caucus coming up. And then also we have our registration will be open for the international conference, hopefully by the end of this month. So please be on the lookout for communication on that. We're really looking forward to being in Toronto and our friends and our Canadian friends up there. So just be on the lookout for future communications. I believe we actually will not have a peer-to-peer in July. We know that with summertime, everyone's kind of in and out of the office. So I think we will be taking a break for July. So be on the lookout for more communication for peer-to-peer to come back in August. I think with that, I think we can end today. But thank you guys so much for coming.